I'm not sure what is the name of the spirit that this shrine is dedicated to, but whoever you are, I'm in need of wisdom and guidance. Zuko was on his knees in front of what he thought might once have been an altar or a statue of some sort. He didn't actually think praying would solve all his problems, but you had to try everything at least once. The smell of smoke rising from the incense reminded Zuko of the monastery he had spent 6 months at when he was 14, and he wondered briefly if the Order would have ways of finding his mother. Shaking his head, he would never go back to them for help. Instead, the prince decided he would specify his wishes. I need help to find my mother, Lady Ursa. If you can hear this, if you are somewhere out there, hear my request and give me an answer. Suddenly, Zuko realized he wasn't alone. Something was moving behind him, and that something wasn't a spirit. 2 years ago, Master Kurta waved his hands in a simple gesture, calling for the flame and moving it to light all the torches in the chamber walls. Zuko had been in this part of the monastery before, but that didn't surprise him. The monastery was a maze with more rooms than any one person needed. There was something different about this room, though. It was old, more like a cave than a room, really. The walls and ceilings were rough and uneven, and decorated with paintings and frescoes that covered almost every inch of the room. The paintings were clearly old, the colors already a bit worn off. They portrayed different things, landscapes, people, dragons, bending, and sword katas. "What are these?" Zuko asked. "These," Kurta said, and gestured toward a certain group of paintings, "are here to help us remember how to find old, almost forgotten Fire Nation shrines." Zuko looked at the collection of frescoes. "I have seen this place before. It's in the Earth Kingdom. How could there be a Fire Nation shrine in the Earth Kingdom?" Kurta looked at the fresco Zuko was pointing at. "Ah, the old dragon shrine. Yes, it is in the Earth Kingdom, but no, that doesn't mean it couldn't be dedicated to a Fire Nation spirit." Zuko felt like asking what Kurta meant, but something told him he would get to hear it anyway, so he looked at the painting more closely instead. True enough, the master wasn't done talking. People often think the way things are now, or have been for the past 100 years, is the way things have always been. Looking further back, we learn that very few things ever stay the same. Land we today see as either Earth Kingdom or Earth Kingdom territories occupied by the Fire Nation has in fact changed ownership many times throughout history. So these lands used to belong to the Fire Nation, Zuko guessed. In the old times, there weren't just 4 nations dedicated to their respective elements. There were rivalries as much within elements as there were between them. There were numerous clans and kingdoms that have long since been forgotten. The separation of element is not as final as you believe, and this is why different elements have much to offer to one another. For example, our order has the air nomads to thank for most of our techniques and teachings. The air nomads? Zuko found that hard to picture. As far as he knew, the air nomads had been a weak and carefree people who had little to offer the world. At least the world seemed to be doing just fine without them in it. Power dragons came from the original firebenders, dragons, but after the art was declared illegal, the Order of Shadows had to specialize in the art of stealth and subtlety. The monks living in air nomad monasteries are very elusive and rarely share their secrets, but they were not the only kind of airbenders there were. When the Order left the Fire Nation and came to these lands, they learned that many wandering warrior monks had settled around these mountains. The monks were rumored to be spirit-touched and to be able to do supernatural things. Our Order quickly deciphered they were airbenders, for that being had always been considered the most mysterious and elusive, and has often been mistaken for the work of spirits. The wandering airbenders have been retired up here to detach themselves from all earthly things and spend their time meditating and honing their skills. After a while, they would let the Order train with them and agreed to teach us some of their wisdom. So it is the air nomads from whom we adopted most of our teachings. We teach it is better to stay unnoticed and avoid conflict than to embrace a fight. We advise to fool the eye of the spectator so that he is not sure what he sees, and only notices what we wish him to notice. Even many of our fighting katas had been directly derived from the flowing way airbenders dodge and deflect. Fire is about direct approach, whereas deception is a trait of air. I mean this as a compliment to the airbenders, of course. The master smiled absently, as if laughing at a joke only he had heard. On a similar note, there is a group of earthbenders in Ba Sing Se who had derived many of their politics and interrogation techniques from our teachings. They believed that our organization was a band of Fire Nation assassins that died out centuries ago. We've worked hard to keep it that way, for the Dai Li are not a group we could go to war with. I do sometimes wonder how much they know of us and our origins. Do they know that by emulating us they are taking influence from their opposite element as well as fire? Zuko thought that over. There was a lot of new information to wrap his head around. Kurta turned to Zuko, his face serious once more. Many of today's bending masters emphasize the unique qualities of the respective arts, focusing on what separates the different bendings. What they don't teach you is that all bending have much in common as well. This is because all bending can and have influenced one another greatly throughout history. Many masters believe that ideas and techniques taken from other elements are weaker than the pure katas of a certain element. This is partially true because the different elements' core ideals are based on different philosophies, but masters who teach such things forget that we all have some amount of each of the four elements within us. This is why a balanced fighter needs to embrace all of his sides, even the weaker ones, especially the weaker ones. So although fire is perhaps the strongest of all the elements, you should always keep your eye and ear open to learn from the other elements as well. All of them. When Kurta put it like that, it sounded pretty reasonable and even self-evident, so Zuko was a little surprised he had never heard anyone describe bending practice in quite these terms. Kurta gave Zuko some time to consider the words before continuing. Those who believe that one element alone should prevail are great fools, and dangerous ones. For Lord Sozin was one of the greatest of all the fools. He had no more right to wipe out the air nomads than the Fire Zulon had to attack the dragons. Zuko froze, unable to believe what he was hearing. And Fire Lord Ozai is no better than his predecessors in his visionless quest to conquer the world without knowing the first thing about what makes the world worth fighting for. Zuko found his voice again. What? How dare you speak of my father in that way? He is a wise and just ruler who is loved by his people. Zuko clenched his hands into fists. He felt like hitting something, preferably Kurta's stupid smug face. How can he say such things? He knows nothing. Kurta turned to look at his apprentice, looking calm, albeit a bit irritated. What did you expect to hear? You know how we feel about the Fire Nation politics. Do you really think that we at the Order remember the Fire Lord, especially the last 3 in our morning prayers? You are wrong, is all Zuko managed to say through gritted teeth before storming out of the room. Present day. An odd rumbling sound that Zuko felt more than heard was all the warning he got before he was under attack. Thankfully, it was all the warning he needed. The prince did not have time to decipher the exact origin of the attack heading his way, but when fighting earthbenders, keeping on the move was never a bad idea. The less you touch the ground, the better, even if that means you have to break your root in ways that Uncle wouldn't approve of if he was here. Zuko leapt out of the way and rolled to turn toward his attacker. 3 pillars of earth shot up from the ground in place where he had been kneeling only a moment before. The power and the precision of the assault made Zuko suspect more than one bender was involved, probably one for each pillar. I hope those were meant to hold me in place. Zuko was good at sneaking around, but he had noticed years ago that many people of Earth were often almost as good as he was, especially when they were in their elements, which was virtually always. Zuko presumed bending the earth around their footsteps had something to do with it, but even that didn't explain how 20 or so guys had stayed under his radar. They can't all be benders, Zuko thought and grimaced. Although it was nighttime, the moon was nearly full and lit the now crowded platform. Zuko couldn't quite make out the insignia on his opponent's uniforms, but he knew they were Earth Kingdom Army. They were disciplined and moved as a group, not in a way Fire Nation armies would have moved. If they had been a Fire Nation ambush, the troops would have surrounded the target entirely, forming an evenly spaced circle around him. These attackers left more than their men out of the ambush circle. Apparently, some backup was more important to them than ensuring the line had no holes to break through. Not just any guys, Zuko realized. By the looks of their weapons, or the lack of them, they chose to leave their benders behind. Zuko had heard the earthbenders prefer to fight from behind a wall, when the troops were creating the benders a human wall to fight from behind. Zuko unsheathed his dao. He would need every trick in his arsenal to get out of the situation in one piece. As much as he didn't like to admit it, even that might not be enough. If these guys knew at all what they were doing, and from the neat way they held their ambush, I'm going to have to presume they do. The kid must have eyes in the back of his head, Private Quinn thought. Most earthbenders wouldn't have been able to see the attack coming, let alone dodge it. Maybe he's just freakishly lucky or something. Quinn moved in formation with the rest of his squad. He was the youngest of the team, but he would be damned if he was the weakest. Sergeant Rang approached the Fire Nation boy. You're outnumbered 20-1. You cannot win. You should drop your weapons and surrender right now. It was weird that a young firebender was up here alone. Rang wanted to take the boy back to their base more or less in one piece, so that he could be interrogated about the nature of his mission. The teenager with the swords appeared unimpressed. If he was afraid, he didn't let it show. Needless to say, he didn't drop his swords. Quang had a bad feeling about this. He had heard that Fire Nation soldiers might choose to fight even when facing impossible odds, but somehow this kid did not seem like this madly desperate type. Which is nonsense, of course. He has nothing on us, Quinn reminded himself. Last chance, boy, Rang said. I'm not worried, the boy spoke up, his tone going for nonchalant. I'm not the one who just desecrated an ancient shrine dedicated to a very, very vengeful spirit. The Blue Spirit. Maybe you've heard of him. He's been pretty active lately. You really take us for fools, Rang sounded more annoyed than anything. Do you think you can scare us off with ghost stories? Quang wished he could share his commanding officer's sentiment, but he had heard so many stories of the Blue Spirit. They could hardly all be fabrications. The private glanced around himself just to be on the safe side. He didn't like the long shadows the nearby cliffs and trees created. Anything could be lurking in any one of them. Quinn returned his attention to the boy just in time. The most experienced earthbender on the team had chosen this to be the right moment to make his move, and try to tackle the firebender to the ground with a slide of rocks. Quinn could barely believe his eyes when the young man held his ground, blocking most of the rocks with nothing but his swords. How was anyone supposed to guess that this kid would avoid 2 sure takedowns in a row? The spearman took a swipe at the boy, who in turn grabbed the spear and used it as leverage to thrust the man aside. Without stopping, the boy continued with the fire kick, making several people closing in on him reconsider. Quinn had fought sword fighters and he had fought firebenders, but no one liked this boy. He moved so effortlessly. The gracefulness of his movements reminded Quinn more of a dance than fighting. He doesn't even look like he's giving it his all. Zuko was definitely giving it his all. There were so many attackers on him, they had to move purely on instinct to keep ahead of them all. However, after a long day of traveling, he wasn't sure how long he can keep this up. Normally, Zuko would have tried to run for cover, but another thing you need to know about skillful earthbenders was that they were good trackers. He couldn't hide behind Earth, and there was little else here to hide behind. The bright moonlight didn't help either. Zuko was a fast runner, but at this point, turning his back and running was about as good as the idea as trying to outrun a full squad of Yu Yan archers. The earthbenders lurking a low distance from the heat of the battle were literally just waiting for him to make a mistake and give them an opening. That's what earthbenders do. They wait for their turn, and if they give them one, they will crush you in a single blow. Quan was terrified. He was sure he had seen something move in the darkness around them, something big. He had to warn the others. Sir, there's something out there. Sergeant Rang looked furious. Private Quinn, another word of this superstitious nonsense, and I will have you dragged back to... The sergeant's last words were drowned out by an eerie whooshing sound that seemed to originate from somewhere close by. Everyone stopped fighting and were now listening intently. The sound ended as abruptly as it begun, leaving an ominous quiet above the platform. 2 years ago, Zuko rushed into Master Kurta's quarters without knocking. The old man was meditating cross-legged on the ground, eyes closed. Zuko didn't wait to be acknowledged. "I'm leaving." "I know," Kurta said without opening his eyes or showing any interest. "You can't stop me." "Whatever would have made you think I would?" "Do not play games with me. You don't think I should leave, and you would stop me if you could. We both know as much." Zuko crossed his arms. Master Kurta sighed, opening his eyes, and broke his meditation session. "Yes and no. You are right. I don't think you should leave, but no, I'm not going to stop you. I could, but I won't." Zuko turned to leave, but Master Kurta went on. "Leaving doesn't mean you won't still be a member of the Order of Shadows. Once you've been taught our ways, you will stay with you forever. Eyes once opened cannot be simply, 'I do not want anything more to do with you!'" Zuko snarled. "And still, you won't tell anyone of us or our teachings. As long as you do not, as long as you keep our secrets, you are one of us." Zuko turned to look at his old master. The prince asked through gritted teeth, "Why? If you hate me and my family so much, why did you take me on as an apprentice? Was this some cruel joke to you? You must have known all along how this would end." "I do not hate you, and any grudge I might hold against your family does not include you." "Well, it should, because I am part of my family." Kurta shook his head. "No, you're not. I have known that since the first time I looked at you. You may be able to lie to others. You may even be able to lie to yourself, but you cannot lie to me. I have seen what Ozai did to you, to his own son, and a betrayal of that magnitude can never be taken back. That is why I took you on as my student, because I knew you would never again be loyal to the man you call father." Zuko would hear no more of this. He threw all the anger in his veins into a massive fireburst. Kurta, having perhaps anticipated Zuko's move, was on his feet and dodged the assault. Before Zuko had time to attack again, Kurta changed from defense to offense and took Zuko down with a single, well-placed swipe of his arm. "Mizora will be extremely disappointed that you left your flank wide open like that. Never let your emotions get the best of you." And just like that, Kurta was out of the room. Zuko left soon as well. When he arrived back on his ship, he told Uncle it's time they continued their hunt for the Avatar. The Order of the Shadows had nothing more to give him. Present day. The moment was tense. However, whatever the noise had been, Zuko would be in trouble if they didn't come back soon. One of the Earthbenders might realize any minute now that that was an excellent time to strike at him. Zuko didn't like not knowing what was out there, but he had no choice but to stay alert for the threat right in front of him. The weird part was that the noise had sounded faintly familiar to Zuko. Where have I heard that before? Almost as requested, the sound began again, and this time it was even louder. It seemed to be coming from all around them. Suddenly, Zuko remembered where he'd heard it before, after the Avatar had thrown him into the Arctic Ocean during their first fight. Zuko had merely taken over by panic underwater. There he had heard something, which is just ridiculous, because he didn't remember hearing anything at the time. But now that he heard this mysterious sound, the prince was definitely reminded of that moment. The sound reminded Zuko of the way the warmth of the sun had called to him. It reminded him of safety and belonging. Which was even weirder. The sun doesn't make noise. The sun doesn't breathe. Breathing. It would certainly explain the rhythm. Whatever it was, it had to be huge. But if it was breathing, it was something alive. It was something he could fight. The entire clearing around him was suddenly filled with a blinding light. High flames rose all around the platform, seemingly out of nothing. Flames revealing something more worrisome than Zuko had suspected. A gigantic dragon was coiled around the platform, breathing a ring of fire to block their escape. The dragon uncurled and rose to the air. It was so big, with each of its movements caused a small gust of wind. The dragon was no longer breathing fire, but the clearing remained well lit as more and more undergrowth caught flame. Soldiers looked petrified, but they didn't try to run. Either they figured they would stand a better chance as a group, or they were too scared to move. Zuko was shocked too, but also mesmerized by the effortless way the magnificent creature moved. Dragon! I can't believe I found a dragon! In the Earth Kingdom of all places! Uncle's never going to believe this. Not that Zuko would probably live to tell the tale. You two, watch out for the monster. Earthbenders, create a way out. The rest of you, as soon as the way is clear, retreat back to your ostrich horses. The leader of the group started ordering his men around. Zuko wasn't sure what good keeping watch would do if the dragon chose to swallow them whole, but the circling beast made no move to stop the soldiers from escaping. Zuko considered his options. The Earthbenders had lifted what little sand there was to put out some flames, creating a way to escape. Zuko could try to go after the running men, but somehow he wasn't too enthusiastic about the option. Sifu Mizra had once told him that he could treat powerful firebenders like he would treat a dragon. Show them respect to let them know that you don't want to fight them, but don't show too much submissive, or it might consider you easy prey. So Zuko stood his ground. For a moment, the only sound around the platform was the crackling of now smoldering flames and the small whooshings caused by this flying creature. Zuko might have mistook the sound for wind if it hadn't been for the weight and power of the creature looming above him. One moment the dragon was circling above Zuko, but in a blink of eye it had landed and was directly in front of him. Its jaws mere meters from the teenager. Dragons can't move like that. Nothing can. Zuko was startled before he realized that what he was looking at was no dragon. Nothing from this world can move like that. But this is not from this world. It's a dragon spirit. Whether that was for better or for worse, Zuko couldn't tell. For a moment that felt like eternity, the spirit gazed at Zuko with his unblinking eyes. All Zuko could do was try to return the gaze. He was pretty sure that the moment he moved an inch, the dragon would burn him or swallow him whole. Zuko wasn't sure if dragon spirits, which he had only heard of in legends, could do that, but the fire earlier had been real enough. The dragon's whisker rose up and began to reach for Zuko. It stopped a few inches from him. It took Zuko a moment to figure out the gesture. You want to interrogate me, but you also want me to meet you halfway. Zuko didn't have much choice at this point, so he took a deep breath and lifted his hand and touched the whisker. A flood of images and sensations filled Zuko's mind, but it was not as confusing or even as difficult as using the power of dragons usually was. Despite the continuous flow of information, it wasn't hard for Zuko to tell his own memories apart from the alien ones. I guess dragons did enjoy this after all. The dragon spirit, Tuli, was at ease. Her long white body moved slowly, like moonlit waves. Zuko wondered briefly if this was what using the power of dragons was like for real masters. Though the sensation of the contact was nothing like having a more experienced firebender breach her mind, this was more like two participants swimming in the same pond, constantly connected by keeping a respectful distance, only showing the other what they wished to show. The conversation had a rhythm, a pulse, like all fire did. It felt natural. She cut straight to the chase. You've summoned me, and here I am. Zuko tried to quickly remember what he exactly asked for in his prayers. Oh yes, answers. Zuko communicated to the best of his abilities. Great Dragon Spirit Tuli, with all due respect, I, Prince Zuko of the Fire Nation, ask for your help. I ask you to tell me where Lady Ursa is. The dragon didn't look pleased. This shrine was built in my honor over 3,000 years ago, but it has been a long time since anyone has remembered me with prayers or sacrifices. This shrine became obsolete long before the days of Zula and the Dragon's Lair. And yet here you stand, human child, asking for my help. What made you think you would find help here? Zuko felt irritated by the dragon's belittling tone, but he had enough sense to stay polite. I came here because I felt like I should. You summoned me here. The dragon's unblinking expression was hard to read, but eventually she answered. No, I did not. I felt a pull toward this forgotten place. If it wasn't you, then who? It was you, human child. You have summoned us both here. Zuko looked skeptical. Truly did the dragon equivalent of rolling her eyes. I am a forgotten spirit. I do not have the power to manifest in the realm of the living on my own. But with the solstice so near and a powerful sage calling me for the first time in centuries, I had enough power to make my mark on the material world. And I am grateful to you for calling me here and giving me a chance to be heard. Zuko didn't understand, so the spirit continued. The Fire Lord has always had a special connection to the Fire Nation spirits, and as his son, so do you. But Zuko still needed clarification. You said I summoned us both here, but I didn't, at least not on purpose. Truly looked bemused. Young, lonely dragons are often drawn to seek out the company of older ones, especially when they are in need of help. Zuko felt unsure whether to trust the spirit or not. Uncle had never told Zuko much about his trip to the spirit realm, but he had mentioned that spirits usually had plans of their own. They had hidden agendas and were not benevolent or helpful to by standard. Though Truly had said she felt grateful to him, so Zuko decided to trust her for the time being. But I am not a dragon, Zuko pointed out, still dubious, and nor are you. The dragon spirit looked amused. These are differences you know in your thoughts, but not in your heart. Suddenly the dragon was right next to Zuko, close enough to touch his chest with her other whisker. You are a dragon at heart, and when you listen to your heart, it will lead you to things you never knew you needed. Truly explained. If you don't believe me, see for yourself. See what dragons are like. Truly showed Zuko short memories of dragons from thousands of years ago. She had been watching the earth a very long time. She showed the prince memories of dragons playing, fighting, and hunting. Truly showed him dragons teaching firebending to humans, and also glimpses of dragons being slain during Azulon's era, and Zuko couldn't help but feel ashamed. Zuko felt sorry for the air nomads too, but in a more abstract way. It was one thing to learn of a genocide, and quite another to witness so intimately. Fear not, little dragon. You are not your grandfather. I would not have come to your aid if you were. Earlier, a comment like that would have made Zuko dubious. In folklore, asking help from an angry spirit seemed to often have serious unintended consequences. However, after seeing into the mighty dragon's mind, Zuko felt like he could trust her. She was angry at those who had hurt her kin, but that was because she cared. She was sad, not vengeful. So you will help me, but why? Because we have more in common than you realize, little dragon. We are both children of Agni, and we are both been hurt and hunted down by our own kind. You are stubborn, feisty, and fight for what you believe in, like a true dragon should. You are so like us. I wonder if your spirit would not have been reincarnated as a human firebender, but as a dragon if dragons were not so few in number these days. Zuko was mildly irritated by the concept, but not enough to lose sight of the main point. So you will help me. You'll help me find my mother. Truly sighed. What is that supposed to mean? Will you help me or not? Zuko asked again. Truly answered. I wish to help you, but I fear that if I give you what you ask for, I will hurt you instead. You are so young, so fragile, and so alone. The dragon shook her head in disapproval. A dragon nestling has many defenses that you do not. Thick skin, sharp claws and teeth, the ability to fly. And still a dragon parent would never leave her child alone to face the dangers of the world. The parent would rather die. Zuko's face paled. He had to prove Tula's implications wrong. My mother didn't abandon me. Then why is she not with you? Why do you not know where she is? Zuko bit his lip. She didn't have a choice. She could be in trouble, so I had to find her. I had to make sure she's okay. I do not question your loyalty, Nestling. The dragon looked almost kind despite her scary appearance. Tuli's white, long body moved slowly. For the first time, Zuko noticed the countless scars covering her scales. Tuli was a fighter, just like he was. Still, Zuko had to find his answers. For the last time, will you help me? For a long moment, the dragon spirit said nothing, but eventually she nodded. I will give you the information you seek, but I must warn you. If you follow your heart on everything, it may find more than it can handle, and then not even thick skin or sharp claws can protect you. I'll take my chances. If you do end up hurt, I could help you carry the burden. I owe you, after all. I didn't think spirits cared that much, to be honest, Zuko stated earnestly. Most do not care at all. I don't always care. But you are kin, and you have been left alone for too long. You need safety and peace. You need time for your wounds to heal. These things I cannot give you, but protection perhaps. Yes, you must. Must what? Let me protect you. I don't need a protector, Zuko stated. It was almost a knee-jerk reaction by now. Yes, you do. You are at war with yourself, and when the war rages at its highest, you are at your most vulnerable. Not even your determination can protect you then. Zuko tried to argue, but Tuli wasn't finished. When you're not sure what you should do, whose side you should be on, or even who you're supposed to be, you're vulnerable. I cannot come to your aid every time. I am not that powerful a spirit, but I can teach you to protect yourself, if you let me. All I ask is that if you do not find your family, be part of mine. Zuko was shocked, but Tuli seemed perfectly serious. We have both been alone and forgotten for too long. Perhaps together we can keep what little remains of my kin alive. Zuko felt unsure. He didn't like the way she implied his family might not be found. I have a family, even if I don't find my mother. I have Uncle. And when I capture the Avatar, my father will welcome me home. Tuli nodded. Very well, but should you change your mind, I am still in your debt. I will come for you, should you need me. Zuko knew that there was something Tula was leaving unsaid, but he also knew asking wouldn't help. The dragon had said all she intended, and now it was up to Zuko to accept the terms or not. Since he was not expected to sign a detailed or even a very binding contract, the agreement to cooperate might lead him to Ursa. The decision wasn't hard.